I remember the sound first. Not the scream. Not the engine. The sound of claws tapping against asphalt like someone knocking on a door that would never open. It was late afternoon, the kind of dull gray evening where the air feels heavy and the light hangs low over the buildings. I had just stepped out of the convenience store with a plastic bag digging into my fingers when I saw the van. White. Plain. No markings. Idling too long for comfort. I wouldn't have noticed it if the dog hadn't been there. He was thin. Patchy fur. One ear bent like it had healed wrong. The kind of stray people learn to ignore because looking too long feels like accepting guilt. He stood across the street, frozen, staring at the van like it had whispered his name. Then the back door slid open. Everything after that happened in fragments. A blur of movement. A muffled struggle. A child's shoe hitting pavement and spinning once before lying still. The door slammed shut. The engine roared. The van pulled away like nothing had happened. For a moment, the world went quiet. No one moved. Not me. Not the woman waiting at the bus stop. Not the man smoking by the lamppost. We all shared that horrible hesitation where the brain refuses to accept what the eyes just witnessed. The dog didn't hesitate. He ran. Not barking. Not panicking. Running with purpose. His ribs expanded with every breath as he chased the van, weaving through traffic, dodging horns and headlights like the city itself was trying to stop him. I felt my chest tighten. I dropped my groceries and ran after the dog. I don't know why. Maybe guilt. Maybe instinct. Maybe because he looked like the only one who understood the urgency of what had just happened. The van turned at the next intersection. The dog didn't slow down. His paws slipped on wet pavement, but he kept going. I followed, lungs burning, heart pounding so loudly I could barely hear the city. Cars honked. Someone shouted. The smell of exhaust filled my throat. The van sped up. The dog sped up too. It didn't make sense. No stray dog runs like that for no reason. Not with that focus. Not with that determination. It felt like he wasn't chasing the van out of curiosity. It felt personal. We ran through 3 blocks before I lost sight of the van. But the dog didn't stop. He kept running, nose low, following something invisible to me. The rhythm of his breathing turned harsh. His legs trembled, yet he pushed forward like stopping would mean losing something he couldn't afford to lose. I slowed. He didn't. That's when I realized I wasn't chasing the van anymore. I was chasing him. We crossed crowded sidewalks, narrow alleys, and streets that smelled like old rain and rust. People stared as I ran past, but no one asked questions. The city has a way of turning urgency into background noise. The dog paused at a corner, sniffed the ground, then darted left. I reached the intersection seconds later, nearly collapsing against a brick wall. My lungs felt like broken glass. My hands shook. I almost gave up right there. But then I heard it. A faint sound carried by the wind. A child crying. It was distant. Weak. But unmistakable. The dog heard it too. His posture changed instantly. His tail stiffened. His ears lifted. He ran again, faster than before, as if the sound had reignited something buried deep inside him. I followed. We moved into a quieter part of the city, where abandoned warehouses leaned like tired giants and streetlights flickered even before sunset. The air felt colder there. Quieter. Wrong. The dog stopped outside a rusted industrial building. The van was parked near the loading dock. My stomach dropped. The dog didn't bark. He didn't charge forward. He crouched low, trembling, watching the building like he understood the danger better than I did. I pulled out my phone with shaking fingers. My voice cracked when I called the police. Words stumbled over each other. I kept glancing at the dog, half expecting him to bolt inside, half terrified he would. The crying grew louder. It wasn't just one child. It was more. Minutes stretched into something unbearable. Every second felt like betrayal. I wanted to go inside. I wanted to do something. But fear glued my feet to the pavement. The dog made the decision for both of us. He slipped through a gap in the broken fence. I whispered for him to stop, but he was already gone. I don't remember deciding to follow. I just remember the smell. Mold. Oh, damp wood. The kind of smell that sticks to your skin and makes your body feel like it shouldn't be there. The inside was dim. Dust floated in narrow beams of light. Somewhere deeper in the building, voices murmured. Come. Casual. Like nothing terrible was happening. The dog moved silently ahead of me. He wasn't wandering. He knew where he was going. We reached a hallway where the crying was unmistakable now. Soft sobs. Whimpers that sounded exhausted rather than loud. The kind of crying that happens after hope has already been drained. I felt something inside me crack. The dog approached a closed metal door. He scratched once. Quiet. Then again harder. A voice from the other side of the hall cursed. Footsteps approached. I grabbed the dog and pulled him behind a stack of crates just as the door opened. A man stepped out, annoyed, lighting a cigarette. He didn't look like a monster. He looked ordinary. That made it worse. My pulse hammered so loudly I thought he would hear it. The dog trembled in my arms, but he didn't make a sound. His eyes stayed locked on the door. The man finished his cigarette and went back inside. I exhaled slowly, realizing I had been holding my breath long enough for my vision to blur. Sirens sounded in the distance. Relief flooded me, but it was fragile. Too fragile. The dog slipped from my grip and approached the door again. This time he didn't scratch. He whined. A soft, broken sound that felt like grief given a voice. From inside the crying changed. A small voice whispered the dog's name. I froze. The door opened slightly. Just enough for a child's face to peek through. Tear streaked. Well. But when the child saw the dog, something lit up behind those exhausted eyes. Oh. The dog wagged his tail for the first time. It wasn't frantic. It was gentle. Careful. Like he was afraid the moment might disappear if he moved too fast. The child reached out through the crack, fingers shaking. That's when I understood. This wasn't a random stray. This was his dog. Before anything else could happen, the sirens grew louder. Chaos erupted inside the building. Voices shouting. Doors slamming. Panic replacing the earlier calm. I pulled the door open wider. 3 children were inside. Tight. Frightened. But alive. The dog rushed to the smallest one and pressed his body against them, licking tears, nudging hands, grounding them in something familiar. The child buried their face into his neck and sobbed with a sound that felt like the release of days of terror. Police flooded the building minutes later. Orders were shouted. People were restrained. The air filled with tension and movement and flashing lights that made everything feel unreal. I stayed in the background, watching the dog refuse to leave the child's side. An officer asked me how I found the place. I looked at the dog. I said I followed him. The truth didn't hit me until later, sitting on a curb while paramedics wrapped blankets around the children. One of the officers told me the kidnappers had been moving victims across cities for weeks. Careful. Quiet. Nearly invisible. The child holding the dog had been taken 3 days earlier. The dog had chased the van when it first happened. He hadn't stopped looking. He had crossed streets, endured hunger, dodged cars, and followed faint traces no human could perceive. He had tracked them across the city without rest. He hadn't been chasing a vehicle. He had been chasing the absence of someone he loved. The child's mother arrived and collapsed when she saw them reunited. The dog remained still as she hugged both of them, his eyes half closed like his body finally understood it was safe to rest. Later, I learned the dog had been adopted from a shelter months before. He had been quiet, skittish, loyal in that cautious way animals are when they've known abandonment. No one expected him to become the reason 3 children were found alive. I visited the family weeks later. The dog remembered me. He walked over slowly, tail wagging, and rested his head against my leg. I felt the steady rhythm of his breathing, calm and present in a way humans rarely manage after trauma. The child told me they weren't scared when the dog appeared outside that warehouse. Not because the situation wasn't terrifying, but because his presence meant the world they had lost was still searching for them. I think about that day often. I think about how many people saw the van and hesitated. How many moments could have been lost forever if a starving stray hadn't refused to accept disappearance as final. Loyalty isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself with speeches or dramatic gestures. Sometimes it looks like a thin dog running across dangerous streets with no guarantee of success. Sometimes it looks like persistence that doesn't understand the concept of giving up. Memory lives differently inside animals. It isn't tangled with doubt or rationalization. It's direct. A bond formed once becomes a direction they never stop following. That dog didn't rescue anyone because he understood justice or heroism. He did it because love, once imprinted, becomes a map that doesn't fade even when the world turns hostile. I still hear the sound of his claws on asphalt sometimes. That quiet, relentless tapping that carried more determination than any siren or shout. It reminds me that truth isn't always uncovered by strength or intelligence. Sometimes it's revealed by devotion that refuses to accept loss as the final chapter. And whenever I pass a stray now, I don't see abandonment. I see possibility. I see stories still unfolding. I see loyalty moving through the world unnoticed, waiting for the moment when it changes everything. Because that day taught me something I can't forget. Justice doesn't always arrive through systems or plans. Sometimes it arrives on 4 tired legs, carrying memory, refusing to let love disappear into silence.